there's been quite a lot of activity on the Sonic the Hedgehog front since I last checked in with you guys. I mean, first of all, Sonic Origins Plus came out and underwhelmed almost as much as the original release of Sonic Origins. Although it does provide another official avenue to play Sonic Blast, or as I prefer to call it, Sonic Blast My Brains Out. Sonic Frontiers got not one, but two substantial updates, with one more update on the way. Oh yeah, and Sonic died? But probably the most significant development Sonic has seen, though, is Sonic Superstars. And not to be confused with Sega Superstars, which, if you didn't know, is actually a horror game. Thankfully, so far, Sonic Superstars is shaping up to be a pretty fun time. I'm pretty excited about a fully fledged co-op multiplayer mode. It's nice to see a Sonic game with a multiplayer mode that doesn't cause me physical pain. Although it does kind of suck that there's no online multiplayer. I was really looking forward to griefing little kids online.
No, you're cheating.
You're gonna learn! This is the real world! You learn it early, son!
That's all you ever do in your house?
But obviously I'm not going to talk about any of that interesting stuff. I'm here to talk about some useless bullshit that only I care about.
I am shocked. Shocked! Well, not that shocked.
So, as you all have probably seen, Fang the Sniper is making his long-awaited return in Sonic Superstars after a 27-year absence. He's even in the animated intro for like a fraction of a second.
There I am, Gary, there I am!
Or, I guess he's Fang the Hunter now? I suppose Sega decided Sniper is too racy for Sonic, which is understandable. I mean, it's not like there's any precedent for guns in the Sonic the Hedgehog universe. That would be just completely idiotic. Now, Fang has a fairly short resume in terms of significant appearances in Sonic games. He debuted in Sonic Triple Trouble on the Game Gear and reappeared in Sonic Drift 2 as a playable character. But if you don't really give a shit about the Game Gear, then if you were gonna see Fang, it was probably either through the Archie comics or through this game, Sonic the Fighters, also known as Sonic Championship for all us dirty Westerners. This game released in 1996, and it was the second ever Sonic arcade game to hit the market after Sega Sonic the Hedgehog in 1993. Sonic the Fighters was actually the first ever fully 3D Sonic game, if you could believe that. I mean, this game is aged like a fine wine. This game even predates Sonic 3D Blast, if you want to count that.
But why? Why would you do that?
This also marks the first appearance of Amy Rose's Pico Pico hammer, so I guess that's kind of cool. People always used to say this game sucks. Ooh, that's pretty rough. And yeah, it's not going to be winning any awards anytime soon, but I don't know, I don't think it's that bad. I mean, it's a game where you can shoot Sonic in the face. How bad can it be? As you might imagine, Sonic the Fighters is a fighting game. Yeah, try not to act so surprised. It plays in a similar vein to like Street Fighter and shit like that, where your only objective is to beat the shit out of the other guy until he runs out of health. It's not that complicated. You're not going to be pulling off any insane combos in this game. Most of the time, mashing the punch button will pretty much get the job done. Still, it's got everything on the fighting game checklist, including a diverse character roster. You've got Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy. You've even got Espio the Chameleon making his return from Knuckles Chaotix, in what I believe to be the final appearance of any of the main Chaotix trio in the classic Sonic universe. Espio even comes complete with his signature weird-ass top spin move that was tragically retconned in Sonic Heroes in favor of a generic ball spin like everyone else.
Look how they massacred my boy.
Now, like I already mentioned, Fang is here, this time sporting a little toy blaster that shoots cocks. There are also these two, who are actually brand new characters making their debuts in Sonic the Fighters, named Bark the Polar Bear and Bean the Dynamite. Although Bean is actually not an entirely original character, having been based on the designs of Bin and Pin from the 1988 Sega arcade game Dynamite Ducks, which is spelled with an X, so you know it's fucking hardcore. If you're wondering why we haven't really seen much of Bean in the Sonic franchise, well, apparently Sonic is too, as according to an official Q&A that took place in 2004, the blue bastard just flat out doesn't know what happened to Bean after Sonic the Fighters, which he states shortly prior to tastefully plugging the then upcoming Sonic Heroes. Yeah, real classy. Thanks for nothing, you corporate shill. Such a transparent attempt at taking advantage of his loyal following. Just absolutely disgusting. On a completely unrelated note, this video is sponsored by Southern New Hampshire University. That's right, boys, this channel's first sponsor. We finally hit the big time. Now, the Sonic fanbase is home to some incredible fan projects, many of which can often even rival the scope and quality of some full official Sonic games. Well, if you've ever wanted to try your hand at making games like this, well, SNHU could be a great option for you to give you the knowledge and experience to create awesome games like this, as well as to turn game development into an actual career. SNHU has one of the largest accredited, non-profit online degree offerings in the country, and through their game development program, you'll learn how to create realistic, dynamic gameplay experiences with game AI, game physics, 2D and 3D graphics, and interface design. Programming languages like C++, C#, and Java, 3D modeling and texturing with industry-standard game art software, as well as how to research, develop, and contribute to advances within the field of game programming. Courses are taught by faculty with real-world experience, and SNHU is incredibly affordable with their online tuition rates being some of the lowest in the nation. If this sounds interesting to you, head to snhu.edu/blocky, also linked in the description, to see what the average annual salary for a programmer is and to request free information about the program. When you make a request for info, you'll talk with a real human being who will hop on a call with you and discuss how the program can personally benefit you. So be sure to give it a look if you're considering a future in game development. Thank you to SNHU for making videos like this possible, and with that, let's get back to the video. Now, the general premise of Sonic the Fighters is that basically Robotnik's built the Death Egg Mark II since the Mark I went so well for him. And Sonic and company need to put a stop to the Death Egg existing, I guess. To be totally honest, I've never really been entirely clear as to what it is the Death Egg actually does. Like, is it just supposed to be like a space station? As far as I can tell, it doesn't really pose any immediate threat to anyone. It seems kind of presumptuous to just blow it up. I mean, what's the harm in letting Eggman have just one little space station? I take it back. Anyway, Sonic and company decide to send someone up to the newly minted Death Egg 2 to destroy it, but uh-oh, Tails' rocket is only a single-seater, wah wah. Because yeah, fitting two people onto a one-man aircraft is just completely unprecedented in the Sonic the Hedgehog continuity. They literally do it in the intro.
I tried my best.
No, you didn't. You slacked off and took the easy way out.
But as you might imagine, Sonic and friends decide to beat the shit out of each other to decide who gets to do the deed of taking care of Dr. Robotonic. Look, I understand it's not the most gripping story, but come on, it's a Sonic the Hedgehog fighting game. Nobody was expecting Lord of the Rings here. Also worth noting is that there are 8 Chaos Emeralds in this game rather than the usual 7, which is pretty weird, although I guess the devs wanted there to be 1 Chaos Emerald for each of the 8 characters in the game, which, yeah, there are only 8 characters to choose from here. Pretty small for a fighting game, even for the time. To be fair though, the Sonic franchise didn't really have too much material to pull from at the time, so there aren't really any glaring omissions despite the small roster size. That's right, everyone who matters is here and accounted for. Anyone who isn't is completely... Oh, I should also mention that Metal Sonic and Eggman both appear in the game as fighters, although neither of them are playable. They just appear as bosses in the game's arcade mode. That is, unless you're a master hacker like me. Oh, that was easier than I thought. Eggman and Metal Sonic aren't the only characters accessible exclusively via hacks, though. There's actually a pretty good handful of completely unused fighters hidden in the game's data. You've got Eggman, UFO Eggman, slightly larger Eggman, and who could forget Green Eggman? I mean, that's just a classic. You also have this guy, a Robo Egg, not to be confused with Egg Robo. This is Robo Egg, whose defining feature is that sometimes his head spins around. That's it. You've also got this guy who appears briefly in the game's intro, known as Rocket Metal, who is an iteration of Metal Sonic that can transform into a rocket ship. Oh my god, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. Man, Rocket Metal is so cool and awesome. There's just no way Sega would squander the potential of such a neat robotic doppelganger character like this. Sorry, I don't know what that was. I wonder what other appearances this character has made in official Sonic media. Probably a lot, because if not, that would be really, really stupid. Like, extremely stupid. This character is pretty much just a reskinned Knuckles with no unique moves whatsoever. But Rocket Metal actually has his own name graphic that's used during gameplay, which seems to indicate that maybe there were bigger plans for Rocket Metal at some point during development. But unfortunately, at least officially, this is all we ever got out of Rocket Metal. Yeah, a measly 3 seconds. I hope you enjoyed that, because that's all you're gonna get. And last but not least, probably the most notable of the unused Sonic the Fighters characters, we have Honey the Cat. who is essentially a furry-fied version of this character of the same name from another AM2 developed Sega fighting game called Fighting Vipers. Holy shit, is that fucking Pepsi Man? This character was apparently intended to be included in Sonic the Fighters as a tribute to Fighting Vipers, since Sonic the Fighters shared the same engine and character designer as that game. Honey the Cat was probably cut due to time constraints, although she's actually mostly complete barring a few little quirks. And although this character didn't make the final cut in the original release of Sonic the Fighters, she did eventually see the light of day when the game was re-released for PS3 and Xbox 360 in 2012, where she was re-implemented as a fully fledged playable character alongside playable versions of Metal Sonic and one of the many Eggmen.
Yeah, no green Eggman, unfortunately, just the one that shows up in arcade mode.
It's not that easy being green.
To select Honey, you have to highlight Amy on the character select screen, then press start. She doesn't have her own character portrait like the other characters. This kind of reminds me of how you'd have to basically input like a whole ass cheat code to select Akuma in Street Fighter 2. Only instead of getting a completely broken, overpowered god of destruction, you get a fucking cat.
You even get an achievement in the 2012 re-release just for selecting Honey the Cat. Which, while I'm on the subject, this version of Sonic the Fighters features some of the easiest achievements I've ever seen. You can get all 12 achievements in the span of like 30 minutes. They're a complete joke. But, you know, if you're the kind of guy who buys games just for the gamer score, then this is the game for you fucking freak. Surprisingly, Honey the Cat wasn't doomed to be forgotten here in Sonic the Fighters like some of her less fortunate alumni. She actually had a relatively prominent role in the Archie comics, where she appeared as the founder and CEO of a clothing line. So if you're really starved for more Honey the Cat, may I ask, why? She also appears as a little trinket alongside Tails Rocket in the intro of the Sega Saturn version of Fighting Vipers, although it's an alternate color scheme based on the original Honey's Player 2 color palette. And yeah, this palette also happens to appear in Sonic the Fighters, again as Honey's Player 2 palette. Normally in mirror matches, Player 2 just appears in grayscale, so this is a nice touch, they didn't have to do that. Also worth noting is that Rocket Metal briefly appears in the Fighting Vipers intro as well, although he's only partially visible. Alright, fine, add it to our running total, I guess.
Well, that was fucking pointless. Other than unused characters, there's plenty of other unused stuff in Sonic the Fighters, including a few music tracks, although they're all included in the game's sound test, so I guess it kind of depends on your definition of unused. Notably, there's this track, titled Sunset Town, on the game's official soundtrack CD, which I would love to own. That's a reasonable price, I can afford that. This track is thought to have been intended for a scrapped stage for Honey the Cat, although the track and its name are all we really have to go on regarding speculation of what this stage could have been like.
We also have this track called Hurry Up in the game's official OST that was apparently supposed to have been used for the final sequence against Dr. Eggman in the game's arcade mode. In the final game, for whatever reason, the Sonic vs. Knuckles theme is used for this fight instead.
Interestingly, this track would actually end up being used for the pre-race cinematic for the Death Egg DLC level of Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, which I think is pretty cool.
Here's something I thought was kind of interesting. There are these heart-struck expressions for all the characters in the game, including Honey, all of which go unused except for Beans, which is sometimes used in one of Amy's moves where she drops random shit on your head. A move which is really hard to do, by the way. You have to like press up, down, punch, but then when you press up, then you jump. But you can't jump, you have to do it on the ground, so you have to do this thing where you like... These expressions were probably intended to have been used in a scrapped attack for Honey the Cat, which has been recreated here. An attack which is referenced internally as Honey's quote-unquote sexy attack. I guess the Sega AM2 devs have a thing for cats.
This better not awaken anything in me.
We know this information thanks to the efforts of Biggest Sonic Fan, who's done a ton of work in dissecting Sonic the Fighter's hidden content over the years, including being involved in the original discovery of Honey the Cat. This video wouldn't have been possible without his work, so I tip my Sonic snapback cap to you, good sir. I'll put a link to his Sonic the Fighter's Sonic Retro thread in the description. There's some really interesting stuff in there, like this unused flying grabby hand thing. That's so fucking weird. Now there's a bunch of other unused shit I haven't really mentioned yet. I don't want to talk about everything, but let's rapid fire some of the highlights. For example, there are these speech bubbles that didn't make the cut. I'd say they had something to do with the name entry screen, although that's just a guess. There are these unused flickies and pockies in the game's data that seem to have something to do with the 8 Chaos Emeralds, since for each emerald there's a flicky and pocky with a corresponding color. And lastly, there's this scrapped Pengo cameo that was probably meant to have been included on Bark's stage, hailing from the 1982 Sega arcade game of the same name, but for some reason it was scrapped. Probably because Pengo sucks and he's a tiny little bitch. If you want to play Sonic the Fighters nowadays, Sega hasn't exactly made it easy to get your hands on the game. Apparently Sonic the Fighters was originally supposed to have been ported to the Sega Saturn, but that never ended up happening. What? I'm just gonna pretend I didn't see that. Most people probably play this game through the Sonic Gems collection on the GameCube, but that version isn't gonna have all the new features added in the 2012 re-release like online play and Honey the Cat. In terms of official releases on modern hardware, unfortunately the 2012 re-release is only still accessible on Xbox consoles. You can still get it on the PS3, but there's no official standalone Sonic the Fighters release available on PC or modern PlayStation consoles. Now, despite this, there is still an official way to play Sonic the Fighters on PC, PS4, and PS5, and that is to play the game through Lost Judgment, which is a Yakuza spin-off. This game features an arcade you can go to that features Sonic the Fighters in full, along with a shit ton of other Sega arcade games. I love when games do this kind of thing, it's so cool. But if you don't feel like playing Lost Judgment, I'm sure there are other ways to play Sonic the Fighters. Of course, none that I'm aware of. I actually played this game on original arcade hardware for this video. It's the Japanese version? Anyway, that's pretty much all I've got for today's video. Sorry for the wait on this one. I got a little burnt out for a while there, but I'm back. Not gonna make you guys wait another 5 months for the next one, so consider subscribing if you want to see me embarrass myself again in the near future, you sick fuck. Next video is gonna be my Sonic the Fighters No Damage Challenge run. Here's a preview.
Hey guys, welcome to my Sonic the Fighters No Damage run. I'm not gonna get hit at all. I actually kind of have a strategy going into this. Basically what I'm gonna do is I'm pretty much just gonna kick his ass.